Hey everyone, in today's how-to I'll be going over some animated effects you can make in your web designs using nothing but some CSS3 properties. To pull off these effects we need to use a property that came out with CSS3, which as I've gone over in my web code fundamentals video is the language used to design how your website's content actually looks. This property is called Transition and it lets you smoothly change from one look for a tag to another. To get the transition to work, you're gonna need two selectors, or the part of the CSS that selects the tags that will be affected. For a very simple demo, I'll just use a div, but these animations can be used for any tag. In my CSS, I've set up a selector for the div, and for the div when a mouse is hovering over it, which is what will trigger the change. We then set the properties and values for both tags, the same as we would for any other time we're making styles. Without our transition, these things will still change how things look when you hover, but in a sudden, jarring way. As of CSS3, we can make it look properly animated. We'll go into the selector that doesn't have any states, which in this case is the one that doesn't have :hover. In this selector, we add a new declaration, this one for transition. Transition works by stating the property you're transitioning and how long the shift lasts in seconds. For my example, I'm making the div's width change over a course of 2 seconds, and the background color will take half a second to change. You can add as many property transitions as you want in a single block here by adding a comma after each duration. Now the really cool thing about this property is that you can change literally any CSS property, at least as far as I'm aware, because really, you could already change any property between one selector and another going way back. All Transition's doing is giving you control over how long it takes to switch those properties, what's changing, and how smooth the transition is. On top of this, there are a few other properties that can go with it for even more control. On a new line, we can add the transition timing function property, which lets us change how the transformation is performed. The value for this can be ease, linear, ease in, ease in-out, or cubic Bezier, all of which control how slow the start and ending of the animation is. You can also give the transition a delay through the transition delay declaration, and as with all things web code, it has a shorthand. The shorthand for transition is transition, followed by the property, time, easing, and delay. With this too, you can just add a comma after one property and add more within the same declaration. All of this, I think, is really cool. But we can do more, thanks to CSS3, with the transform properties that were also added. Let's go into those for a bit too. So the transform property allows you to, as it says, transform the content of your website in 2D and 3D effects. These effects include moving things with the translate value with the X and Y positions in the parentheses, spinning content with rotate, setting the degrees it's being rotated by, entering a number, followed by DEG. You can also change sizes with scale, saying the X and Y in parentheses, using 1 as 100% of the original scale, and any changes from there. On top of those, you can warp things with the skew X and skew Y values, which you also use the degrees for. These can be put into the skew shorthand, setting degrees for X and Y with commas separating them. Lastly, there's the matrix property. Matrix, in this order, sets the scale X, skew Y, skew X, scale Y, translate X, and translate Y. There are more transformations. There are 3D transformations in the rotate X, rotate Y, and rotate Z properties. Translate and scale also have X, Y, and Z versions, all of which use degrees. Unlike matrix, these all have shorthands that make sense, with translate 3D, scale 3D, and rotate 3D, which go in the orders of X, Y, and Z. And connecting everything back, you can then add a transition property, which will transition your transform property. Unfortunately, you can't, using the transition, animate multiple properties. Luckily, we have one more new CSS3 idea that can, although it can get a bit intense. Keyframes is a new rule in CSS which acts similarly to programming, at least in how it looks. First, we type out @keyframes and then a name for our animation before typing out our brackets. In the selector that we want to animate, we then need to type the animation name in animation name and use the same information. We then also set the animation duration, again using a number ending in S, and this does need to be set for there to be any effect. Now we can get to the actual animation. In our keyframes, we can type out from and to with the properties we're changing and what we're changing them to in the parentheses. From and to also represent the start and end of the animation, or 0 and 100% of the animation. I mention percentages because you can manually enter as many changes as you want by using different percentages. For example, at 50% of my animation, I can change the height to 25%, and at 100% of the animation, I can have the width changed to 100%, the background color changed, and the height at 50%. It'll then smoothly change all the way through, changing to the settings that I had them at the points that I set them. But you can add as many percentages and styles to go with them as you want, keeping in mind the percentages are using your animation duration. You can also change how many times the animation will run through by adding the animation iteration count property and a number or the word infinite to the tag you're animating. Something else you can do is change the direction of the animation by adding the animation direction property to the tag as well. Reverse will make the whole thing go backward, which to me seems useless, but you can also make the value alternate, which will make your animation switch between forward, backward, and forward, which combined with shorter durations and an infinite iteration count can make for some awesome, easily created loading graphics. As with the others, you can also change how smooth the animation is using the animation timing function in your tag. And lastly, we have one more shorthand. The animation shorthand uses the name of your animation, the duration, the timing function, any delay you want to use, how often it loops, and which direction you want the animation in. One last thing to note is that this is a CSS thing, and as with most things on the web, quite a few CSS3 properties aren't supported universally. To fix that, we need to do a bit more work. First, double check with the W3 School site to see if something's supported already or not. If it isn't, duplicate any unsupported code and at the start of your selector, add -webkit and another dash. Also do this while replacing WebKit, which is for Chrome and Safari, with O for Opera and MOZ for Firefox. This will most usually let you use the effects even when they're not fully supported. And that was how to do pure CSS animations for your web designs and apps. As always, I hope you've all learned something and enjoyed yourself doing it. If you have any questions, thoughts, or other feedback, you can let me know with a comment down below. You can also like this video and share it around, which helps with Google's rankings. And I'm planning to be back here every Friday, so be sure to subscribe for more awesome content. Have a great day, everyone.